Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack a truly pivotal, high stakes moment in recent history. We're talking about a moment when the White House stood on the absolute brink of an Iranian nuclear conflict. We're going to examine the anatomy of a massive geopolitical decision, looking at exactly what was on the table, the intense risks involved, and the ultimate decision that literally altered the course of international relations.
Now, you might be wondering, just how close did we actually come to a live US Iran war over uranium? Well, back in mid November 2020, right during the twilight of a presidential term, it was a very real, tangible reality being weighed inside the Oval Office. We're talking about a situation where a single authorization could have triggered a massive cascade of military engagements all across the Middle East.
Section 1, the nuclear conflict context.
When we talk about an Iranian nuclear conflict, we aren't necessarily talking about a nuclear weapon actually being fired. Instead, we're talking about a kinetic, conventional military conflict ignited directly by targeting nuclear infrastructure. Think fighter jets, bunker-busting munitions, and the very real threat of immediate, heavy regional retaliation. And, this flashpoint wasn't just random. It was ignited because international inspectors reported a massive spike in Iran's nuclear stockpile, which prompted the administration to look at some seriously drastic, kinetic options.
Moving to Section 2, a high-risk uranium mission.
The absolute core objective of this proposed military action was focused squarely on neutralizing Iranian uranium assets. Specifically, we're talking about the main nuclear site at Natanz. This definitely wasn't some generalized military posturing exercise. Targeting a heavily fortified, often subterranean facility like that requires immense precision and overwhelming force aimed directly at the very heart of Iran's capabilities.
And the dangers of a uranium mission like this, they were absolutely profound. Beyond the severe operational risks of penetrating heavily guarded sites or the terrifying environmental hazards of striking nuclear material, the biggest danger by far was the retaliatory risk. A strike would almost certainly not go unanswered. It could potentially draw U.S. forces, regional allies, and Iranian proxies into a massive live war, right in the final weeks of a presidency. That brings us to Section 3, weighing the options. It's a matter of public record that Donald Trump actively considered authorizing this live, high-risk mission. The commander-in-chief was right there, looking at the intelligence, weighing the potential degradation of Iran's nuclear program against the chaotic fallout of a regional war. But key advisors, and we're talking about Vice President Mike Pence, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and General Mark Milley, strongly warned against the potential for a broad escalation. The administration essentially faced a monumental geopolitical chess game. Do you execute a high-risk mission to proactively eliminate a perceived threat, taking on the heavy burden of initiating a war? Or do you exercise restraint, keep your powder dry, but potentially allow a rival to continue its nuclear progress? It was a classic high-stakes presidential dilemma.
Section 4, the decision to walk away. Ultimately, the administration made a definitive pivot away from the uranium mission. And it's important to remember that in the context of military strategy, a retreat from a proposed action is just as active a decision as moving forward. It required a really tough calculation by the president and his top officials that the cost of action simply far outweighed the cost of inaction. After hearing all that pushback from his cabinet, the president ultimately stepped back. As reports explicitly state, he, quote, walked away from the mission. They looked right over the precipice of a live US-Iran war, evaluated the immense risks associated with striking those uranium targets, and deliberately decided to de-escalate the whole shebang. Section 5, why this matters today.
The absolute crucial takeaway you should grasp from this explainer is the sheer magnitude of what was avoided. A US-Iran war was completely averted. When we look at global markets, international security, and the deployment of troops around the world, understanding these exact moments where leaders chose restraint over conflict is absolutely vital. It shows us where the real red lines are, and it reminds us that sometimes the most impactful geopolitical events are the wars that actually don't happen.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought. How does this hidden moment of restraint shape current US-Iran relations? Does walking away from a high-risk uranium mission set a precedent for future administrations? Really think about how the echoes of that single decision in the Oval Office continue to influence the delicate and often volatile balance of power in the Middle East today.